Hello everyone, you're welcome to my YouTube channel. Okay, this is Ness Stephanie. In today's video, we're going to be talking about shock, the various stages of shock, the types of shock, their signs and symptoms, and the ways to manage this shock. And so, what is shock all about? Shock actually is a life-threatening condition where the tissue of the body don't receive enough oxygen and nutrients to allow the cells to perform their function properly. And so this can lead to cellular death. It can also lead to organ failure and finally death. Cells actually in the body uses oxygen and glucose to function, and these cells uses this to generate energy from it. And so where does oxygen comes from? It comes from the air that we breathe in, and it goes through the lungs, from the lungs to the capillaries, and from the capillaries it goes across to the bloodstream, where it is being picked up by hemoglobin from the red blood cells, why the glucose come from the food that we eat. Okay, so now we are going to move down now to the various stages of shock. We have four main stages of shock. So the first stage here is the initial stage. Here, hypoperfusion causes hypoxia. Hypoxia actually is the insufficient availability of oxygen at the tissue level. So due to lack of oxygen, the cells tend to use anaerobic respiration. That is, anaerobic respiration here comes where there is oxygen is not needed, so they tend to use anaerobic respiration to produce energy. And so this leads to production and storage of lactic acid. Okay, the next that we have is the compensatory stage. Yeah, this is where the body employs physiological mechanism. That is, like, you have example like the neural, the hormonal, the biochemical mechanism to reverse this condition. Okay, the next that we have is the progressive stage. That's the third one, the progressive stage. This is where the compensatory stage has failed, so the progressive stage takes over. There is the shock continue to progress. So yeah, there's urine, there is the urine output greatly drop, there is leakage and acidity of blood, and also there is liver failure. Organs begins to fail there. Okay, so the last stage that we have is the refractory stage. This is the stage in which the shock is irreversible. Yeah, the heart is tired of pumping blood. The heart becomes tired of pumping blood and pump blood no more. The respiratory system becomes fatigued. The brain becomes hypoxic, which leads to death of brain cells, and death finally occur. So those were the four stages of shock. Now we're going to move down now to the various types of shock. So, but before we go down to that, if you're new in this channel, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share my videos. Thank you. So, what are the various types of shock? The first type of shock that we have is the hypovolemic shock. This is the most common type of shock that occurs in most individuals. So in this type of shock, it is mainly caused by hemorrhage and dehydration. There is loss of fluid in the circulation. The second type that we have is the cardiogenic shock. This type of shock is being caused by failure of the heart to pump blood effectively. It is due to damage of the heart muscle. There is myocardial infarction, or it can also be caused by congestive heart failure. So the next type that we have, which is the third, is obstructive shock. In this type of shock, it is caused by obstruction of blood flow outside of the heart. It can be caused by pulmonary embolism or aortic stenosis. Okay, the next type, which is the last type of shock that we have, is the distributive shock. In this type of shock, it is the impaired utilization of oxygen, and thus lead to decrease in the production of energy by the cell. Alright, under distributive shock, we have three different types of shock. The first type that we have is the septic shock. It is caused by an overwhelming systemic infection. The second type is anaphylactic shock. This is a shock that is mostly caused by allergy. It can be allergen to a particular drug or food that we take in, especially like foreign proteins that we take into the body, which leads to the release of histamine, which can cause vasodilation and lead to low blood pressure. Okay, then the last type of destructive shock that we have is the neurogenic shock. This is mostly caused by high spinal injury. So those are the types of shock that we have. So now we're going to move down now to the signs and symptoms of this shock in general. So the first sign and symptoms of this shock have hypotension, there is low blood pressure, you have rapid and shallow breathing, you have anxiety, you have cold and clammy skin. The next we have thirst and dry mouth. You have weakness and fatigue. You have rapid pulse and tachycardia. Then the last one we have hypothermia. That is, hypothermia is low temperature, body temperature. So those are the signs and symptoms of this shock that we just mentioned above. So now we're going to move down to the various ways to manage this shock that we just mentioned above. So first, you ensure the airway. You ensure that the airway of a patient or the person in that condition is clear. That is, you ensure that there is no fluid obstructing the airway. So in case of any fluid obstructing the airway, you can turn the head of the patient sideward so that the fluid can come out through the mouth or even through the nose. Then the next, you ensure breathing. In case the patient cannot breathe normally on its own, while calling for an ambulance, you make sure that you do cardiopulmonary resuscitation or mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. So the next ways to manage it, which is the third one, we can raise the leg of the patient or the person. You raise the leg of the person. Why ensuring that the head of that person is lying flat on the ground, you raise the leg up as possible. Okay, the next way to manage the shock, you make sure that you keep the person or the patient warm as possible. Then the next way, you manage anxiety and pain of this patient or the person. Okay, so the other ways, this is mostly done by healthcare providers. You can administer oxygen if in case of no breathing, or in case the patient cannot breathe on its own, you administer oxygen. You can administer intravenous fluid to balance the blood pressure. You can administer vasoconstrictive drugs to the patient. Okay, so that is all what we have for today with you. Thank you for watching.